Oh, hi, hello. Um, Welcome. I am going to do a video on the legal system, and we're going to try and sort of, I just get through it somehow. I really don't know where this video is going to go and end up. It's just off the cuff kind of stuff, um, and it's really as a result of seeing yet again another Richard Vobes video. Just started watching that channel not too long ago. Um, and of course now every time there's a new video it sends it in my direction, of course. And anything that's got a lawful or legal kind of aspect to it, I want to watch it, to see what somebody's got to say about this, how to deal with the legal system, and um, all the understanding how taxes and all this stuff work. Unfortunately, the stuff that Richard Vobes is putting out there, I don't believe is very well vetted. I'm not sure about really his level of understanding of what's going on with the legal system, and what's the difference between the legal system and natural law, and understanding those different jurisdictions, and just understanding how that system works and the purpose of the system and how it's been corrupted. Um, there's a lot of bits and pieces, a lot of little bits and pieces to put together, and you can go through the comments on his videos. I have yet to find somebody that's really, got a good grasp on what's going on with the legal system. Okay, there's people that are firmly attached to it still. There's people, and then there's people that maybe are sort of against that system in certain aspects. That again, they don't have the full comprehension of the thing, and so you end up seeing people spread the same old nonsense and myths about the legal system, which doesn't do anybody any favors. Even in the so-called truth circles, you still hear people saying, well, you don't own your house because the government can charge you property tax and all this stuff. It's just stuff like that is just not helpful to anybody. Okay, and so this is why at some point I'm going to actually have to sit down and actually write something out that makes logical sense, and try to do some kind of written piece of work that people can read through and get and just be able to follow along, and then go back and reread certain bits of it, just because there's so much information, but it's actually such a simple concept to understanding the difference between the legal system and natural law. And excuse me, once you get to that point of understanding where those jurisdictional boundaries lie and why there's a jurisdictional boundary between these two things, it's actually easy to deal with certain questions that crop up. Like if you're in court, all the questions that crop up in court cease to be a problem anymore. Okay, um, with the judge trying it on with the tricking you type of stuff. None of that is a problem once you can understand the way these two systems work, or the way, really what you need to understand is you've got to understand the difference between the physical world, yeah, and the spiritual world, between the physical and the metaphysical. Because once you can understand that difference, it sounds like it should be easy for people to understand, but people really can't draw a line between what is an idea and what is physical. Okay, so I guess in this video we're going to just try and go and talk through some stuff. And sorry, it's a blank screen, but if I need to, I will draw something on here. But I'm hoping I can just talk through it, because trying to draw on this thing just takes forever, and it's not really the best when it looks like a 2-year-old is drawing on the screen. It's incredibly difficult to draw with a mouse, just a regular old mouse. Anyway, so I think the first place to start is why do we have a legal system? Okay, and I'm going to have to kind of cut some of the explanations short here, because we don't want to be talking for a couple of hours on why we've got a legal system or where it comes from. Okay, but you would have heard the legal system being called maritime law or merchant law, or all these ideas, and it's to do with trading basically. And what it boils down to is that a very long time ago, somebody came up with this system, probably a group of traders, or some kind of city-state area that dealt with traders a lot, or dealt with traders a lot, um, and it's just a protection system basically. All right. So if you were hauling a whole bunch of, I don't know, grain to another country on a sailing boat or whatever, it's a bit of a long trek usually, and a bit of a dangerous one, and a bit of an expensive one to haul, vast quantities of, anything you want to trade really, but vast quantities of grain, for example, to another country to sell. There's a lot of risk there. When you get to the other country, just getting there is a lot of risk. When you get there, getting robbed, when you pull into port, um, and then you've got the problem of you've just traveled all that distance, and maybe there's nobody to buy that stuff when you get there. Maybe somebody told you the last time you were in port, oh yeah, bring me some more of that stuff, I'll have a load of that. You show up the following time, and all of a sudden the same guy saying, nah, I don't want it now, I don't need that, I don't want to buy it from you. And you've just traveled thousands of miles and you can't sell anything, or you've just traveled thousands of miles and you get mugged on the dock, and you haven't got, you get all your stuff stolen. The legal system, I say the legal system, that merchant system is a protection system. Okay, you want to pull into a port where you're protected, where your goods are protected, and where you can deal with the people that are there, where you can have a fair exchange with the people there. So a system was set up to accommodate that idea. And one of the biggest things with that system would have been contract law. Would have been this idea of actually being able to go somewhere and being able to sell your stuff, or already almost sold it on a contract. Okay, so that when you show up, you're able to get rid of that gear. Okay, so this is where the idea of contracts come in. Now you might think, well, anybody can have a contract, and that's true. Any man can have a contract with another man. But the problem you have with men a man having a contract with another man, which is what is essentially his word, that he will do something for another man, and in exchange the other man will do something for him, usually pay him for a job or something, so forth and so on, right? So you have this, within the bounds of men, we have an agreement, so to speak, our word to do something in exchange for something else. The problem that you have with men giving their word to do something is that sometimes circumstances change. Let's say you're going to mow the lawn for the neighbor, yeah, and you're going to get $10 to go and do that, and all of a sudden, before you get over there to do the lawn, fuel prices double, and it's going to cost you more than $10 to mow your neighbor's lawn now. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, I don't really want to go over there and mow it and lose money. So what would usually happen with men is you'd go over and say, look, I was all set to do it, but the fuel price has gone up. I'm not going to make any money. It's not worth my while. I'm not going to do it anymore. Sorry, unless you want to pay me some more money. And so between men, the problem is, because we're changing minute to minute and moment to moment, because we're not the same man we were 10, 15, 20 years ago, yeah, because our minds are constantly changing, and what we want to do is constantly changing. we've not got anything set in stone, and we don't have to have anything set in stone. That's part of our prerogative, that we live in the world that is moving through time and changing around us. So to cut a long story short, you need a way to bind a man to his word, so he'll do what he says. And that's the purpose of a contract. You have to have something there to bind a man to do that job at the end of the day, or pay whatever they've got to pay for the job, right? Now, again, you can't force a man to do something. If he said he would do it, you can't force him to do it if he changes his mind. You simply can't do that, right? Even if you give him money to do a job and he turns around and says, no, I'm not going to do it now, the only thing that he needs to do is return that value back to whoever paid it out, and everything's squared away again. He doesn't have to do the job if he doesn't want to. So the problem is, how do you bind a man to do a job when you can't bind a man to do a job? Well, what you do is you create a little token character, okay, that is his playing chip, his playing token, his little piece on the chessboard, right? You create that little character, and then somebody has to control the little character and tell the little character what it can and can't do. So how do you bind a man? What you do is you have him put some money, in a special account for that playing chip, So let's draw a picture here. So over one side is this man over here, okay, the living man, and then over this side there's another man, and he's running the system. This is the legal system over here. And so this man wants to play, he wants to be a trader, and he wants to have security, and he wants to be in that system. But he himself can't be bound, okay? He's only bound when he infringes on natural law. But we'll get onto that in a little bit. The only time that another man can put his hands on this guy is when he breaks natural law. But we're not talking about breaking natural law. We're talking about breaking a word, so to speak, rather than actually doing physical harm to somebody else. So this guy over here, he needs a playing piece. So what they're going to do is they're just going to give him a piece of paper, and it'll just have his name on it. Okay, that's his playing piece. So Joe Blogs over here. Okay, now this is his playing piece. Now what has to happen is he can't have control of this thing. Okay, so what they do is they give him a copy of this thing, and they keep the original playing piece over here. Okay, because they need the original to have control of it. And so the problem is, now they have control over, supposedly over this. This is not really technically how it works, but because they have the original piece of paper with the name on, okay, this character here has a copy of it, and so he now can interact with these people here, and vice versa. Okay, the problem is there's still nothing. If these people over here say you have to do something over here, there's a rule that says you have to do something over here, like, I don't know, like only go 30 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. Okay, you can't take your horse and cart any faster than that. This guy here doesn't necessarily, what does it matter if he breaks that rule? There's no penalty for breaking the rule. So what has to happen is there has to be an account set up over here in some form of a bank. Okay, you'll notice that banks and courthouses tend to be in the format of like I don't know, in the format of a temple type building, as that Roman Greek style building that looks like, it's like this. Okay, the courthouse, the bank, whatever. It has this kind of style of building, right? And there's a subtle reason why that's like that, okay? Because what you're doing, you're really entering into the metaphysical. You're entering into the temple, yeah? Your head, the temple right here, yeah, is where the metaphysical exists, inside your head, okay? That's really the only place that the metaphysical exists, that we can perceive the metaphysical. You can't perceive the metaphysical anywhere else apart from in your own head. You can't perceive the metaphysical in somebody else's head. This is all important stuff. But anyway, so the temple is where the metaphysical exists. Okay, so that's a key thing to understand, is that we're dealing with a system that is essentially just a system of ideas. Yeah, it's just ideas written down on pieces of paper. So the problem is, we've got to have a system though that can bind this man over to this piece of paper. Yeah, we have to have some kind of insurance that this guy will do what he said he would do. Yeah, or at least something that will coerce him into doing what the rules say. Okay. And so what we have to have is, this guy really needs to put into the bank here, you know, some dollars, okay, or pounds, or whatever you want to, you know, whatever. But something's got to go into the bank. Did I do that backwards? I don't know. Anyway, something's got to go into the bank. A big lump sum of money that belongs to this guy. Yeah. So he has an interest, yeah, in the system, you know, doing what the system says. You know, he has to put some kind of collateral down, because there has to be some kind of incentive for him to do what the system says to do. Okay, so this is the way I think it worked in the olden days, is the trader would have deposited X amount in the bank, and then these guys in the legal system would have been in charge of, or that money would have guaranteed this trading name. Okay, and without that money in there, you can't have a trading name. So that's how I think it would have worked in the old days. I mean, this is all just, you know, common sense deduction. Okay, now what we have now is, you'll hear people go on about this great big KV trust or whatever, and in one respect it's kind of like a trust, because it's there for the name on the piece of paper, but it's actually not there for that name on the piece of paper. It's actually this name on the piece of paper, the original, what we would call now the birth certificate. Okay, so it's actually there for that name on a piece of paper, is what I believe. And I don't believe it's a trust fund. It's not been put there by this guy. No, that has not come from this guy. It has been deposited there from well, who the hell knows, really, from some source, and it has been deposited in the bank right there, on behalf of this thing here. So we're getting in a bit of a mess now, but somebody has deposited money in the bank to create this playing card here, this trading name, the birth certificate, the original birth certificate. And then what they do is they just send out a copy to you. So you don't really have any interest in, I mean, people think this belongs to them, this money, because they have supposed control of this copy of a birth certificate. But this is not the same thing. Okay, I'm telling you right now. The copy, you can have dozens of copies of the birth certificate, you know, and there's dozens of people out there with the same name. So what it really boils down to is, who has control of the original birth certificate. That's what the whole legal system boils down to. That piece of paper that's in a filing cabinet somewhere, that's the golden key to the whole system. He who has control of this, yeah, well, is in control of it. And then what happens from there on out is, just imagine this is a void here. This is a, you could also imagine it as a mirror. And anytime somebody does something over here, whenever this guy does anything, what is offered up is an idea to the mirror, to the void, and then this side decides whether to act on it or not. Maybe there's a judge there, or maybe there's somebody in an office building, and you give them a piece of paperwork, up to this point here. They look at the paperwork, and then they decide whether they're going to do anything about it or not. But there is no actual, all this stuff that's on this side is not really part of this system. Physically speaking, the stuff that's on this side of the system is not part of this side of the system. Okay, what is offered up is pieces of paper are transferred backwards and forwards, but these are not the same pieces of paper. Okay, you've got to understand that this is just a copy of this. Let's think about identical twins. Are identical twins, I mean, they're a copy of each other. Are they the same thing though? Yeah? Are they the same individual? No, they're not, because the metaphysical aspect of the thing is slightly different. The spirit that embodies one is slightly different to the other. Okay? So we can have things that are identical and still not be the same thing. Okay? The same way as you can have, I could take a copy of this piece of paper, and you didn't have to put copy on this one. But the problem then becomes, well, who has the original? So you have to have, somebody has to put original on one and copy on the other. Yeah? And it's in the interest of the party that wants to control this thing to be the owner of the original. And that's all they have control of. They do not have control of the copy. Once they hand that thing over the line to you, that now becomes your possession, that copy. Okay, it's not theirs anymore. They've given it away. This is important to understand. They will not give you the original birth certificate. They cannot give that thing away. If they give that thing away, they give away possession of the thing. They give away jurisdiction over the thing. They only have jurisdiction over this, not this. Even though they look the same, they are not the same. And even though I have jurisdiction over this thing, just like one twin has jurisdiction over his own head, the other twin, this twin is not affecting this twin. This twin is not thinking something, and then this twin's arm moves up or does something, and vice versa. This twin here can't control this twin. Yet they're identical, but they're not the same thing, are they? It's something you have to get your head wrapped around, okay? Not only that, but if you listen to what I'm saying here, another concept to get your head wrapped around is you have to have possession of something to have control of it. To control it. In the physical world, the world in which we live, you cannot control something with your mind. I don't care if people think you can. I have yet to see some evidence that you can control something purely with your mind. Now, let me explain, because there'll be somebody out there, I don't know, like, here's an example, right? You've got the TV here, right? Okay. Now, somebody sat over here, and it's not really the same thing, but eventually they'll get to a point where, you can just think about something, supposedly, but just pretend this guy's got the remote, and there's nothing here in the middle of here, yeah? Yeah, there's a void here as well. There's nothing there, okay? And he can think about it and, actuate his finger to turn the TV on, right? Okay, this is not metaphysical, okay, turning on the TV. There is still forget about the remote. We're imagining the remote is, kind of his mind here, right? There is still a signal, yeah, coming through the physical here. Waves, if you like, coming through the physical. The same as sound is a wave. It's a perturbation of the air, yeah, and the same as this is again, another perturbation, sending a signal. It's in a physical format, this wave, okay? It's, if you like, it's little molecules hitting each other, okay, and passing a signal on. So there is like a physical connection, yeah, even though it's spread out, it's a physical connection, right? This is important. This is a physical connection to this TV, even though you don't really see it. You're saying something here, or something's being beamed here. It's like a knock-on effect to the TV. So it's like pressing a button. We press one button and it hits another button, hits another button, hits another button until it turns the TV on. Okay, what I'm trying to get at is this is a physical thing that's going on here. This isn't this guy just thinking it and it turns on. Okay, that is important to know. You cannot affect anything unless somebody can come up with an idea that I would, that makes sense. You cannot affect something with just your mind. You cannot think about the TV turning on and then it just turns on. Okay, so a thought process, that true delving into the metaphysical, an idea, is not going to affect something in the physical world without you doing something physical to accomplish that. Yeah, that is important to know, okay? Because when a judge turns up in a courtroom and starts asking for Joe Bloggs, and then judge decides maybe they're going to talk on behalf, or they're going to have a lawyer talk on behalf of Joe Bloggs, they cannot do that. They cannot do it, okay? But they can do it with a caveat to that, because they can have any old piece of paper up their sleeve. If you're in the courtroom, that judge, up his sleeve, he can have a piece of paper with Joe Bloggs written on it. I can't write small enough, just write a J in there, with Joe Bloggs written on it, okay? And he can be talking to this piece of paper in the courtroom, okay? Mr. Judgy is talking to this piece of paper with Joe Bloggs, another version of Joe Bloggs, up his sleeve. Yeah? There's millions of people with that name in the world. It's not exclusive to anybody, yeah, per se. It's not any name out there can be used by anybody else. There's no copyright on it. That's just legal bullshit as well, excuse my French. Anybody can use those words, those sounds, those letters. Okay, so there's nothing special about that label in any way. But this character, the judge, if they don't want to be committing fraud, they ought to have a piece of paper up their sleeve with that name written on it. And then, of course, they can talk on behalf of Joe Bloggs. And guess what? The lawyer that comes in has a piece of paper with Joe Bloggs written on it. I'm talking, I've got it on my physical person, because you can't talk for something. You can't be something you don't have contact with. Like what I was saying, your mind, yeah, cannot turn the TV on just by itself. You have to have some kind of physical contact. Yeah? You have to have some kind of physical contact to affect something in the physical world. So this, technically speaking, this judge has got to have contact with the Joe Bloggs in order to make a decision on behalf of a Joe Bloggs up his sleeve. Yeah? It doesn't necessarily have to be the original birth certificate, but the original birth certificate is the thing they have jurisdiction over. So it ought to be that he has contact with the original birth certificate, but I doubt they bring the original birth certificate to a court hearing. I doubt they do that. Anyway, so if that makes sense, in the lawyer that's going to speak for. So if you don't say anything in court, that's what they'll do. They'll just speak on your behalf. But they're not really speaking on your behalf. They're just speaking on behalf of a Joe Bloggs that's up their sleeve. Yeah? And then once they've spoken on behalf of this, they will just present what's happened, and somebody will just file it. And really, what they have jurisdiction over, or what they'll file it with, is the paperwork for this dude. And the same, when you go into court, they're really talking to this Joe Bloggs that's a copy of this Joe Bloggs. But they're really not. Because, again, this technically is fraud to talk to this, because they don't have jurisdiction over it. I mean, they can talk to it, but they can't demand that this copy of Joe Bloggs here does anything. Okay? What most people think is they're talking to them. I watched a court case the other day. I tried to find these things on YouTube, and a woman had gone into court, and she had said, I can't remember actually what she said. She said something though to the effect that the court didn't have jurisdiction on her. But she was in the, it was a, internet meeting jobby, where they, I don't know, what a tele meeting thing. I'm guessing it was when COVID was going on. And so she had said, well, the court doesn't have any jurisdiction over me. And the judge proceeded to say, and give her an earful, but the judge was all right. The judge said, well, why are you even here in this court when you're telling me I don't have jurisdiction over you? The judge was saying to her, why are you wasting my time? Why are you even in this court if you believe I don't have jurisdiction over you? And of course, the the individual did not know what to say to that. Yeah. She didn't pipe up with, well, I'm here by, what usually people do is they will say they're there as a special appearance or something along those, making a special appearance. They'll say something along those lines. But that's not really what and some people will say, I'm here under duress because you've sent me a summons here, but it's not really me that you have jurisdiction over, and they will bring up the idea of the fictional character, and that's what you need to get on. That kind of idea is where you need to persist and be like, yeah, I'm here because I don't want you to make a mistake. I don't want you to get me confused, which you already have by sending me a letter. I don't want you to get me confused with this dude over here that you have jurisdiction over. Yeah, I don't want you to get confused with the stuff that I have jurisdiction over, and I don't want you to get confused with me, the living man. And then you can go on, because we all share the same label, or a very similar label, which could be confused easily. Okay? Once you start down that road, once you start down the road that you can show what you're talking about, most of the judges will back down, or they'll just get up and walk out. Yeah, and then you'll have to have the same performance again. But most of the time they'll get up and walk out, I reckon, because they don't know what to do. They just leave you hanging, sort of thing. And you can't affect anything. I mean, you cannot affect anything in that mode. You can't affect anything in that court because you're not a legal entity. This is a boundary here. Yeah. You are separate. You are completely separate from this system. This is why they don't have any jurisdiction over you when you go into court, because you're completely separate. Okay, and you have to be able to tell them, look, I stepped in here. This wasn't a closed off room. Do you live here? Is this your home? Do you have, domain over this area? Because nobody informed me that you have to go into all this kind of stuff with the judge, so that they really know that you know what you're talking about. And this is why it's dangerous when you see Richard Vobes going on about stuff, and that there's some crazy stuff on that channel. But when you see him talking about things, and he just gives out enough information, or the people on that show just give out enough information that can get people into trouble, you know. And of course, you know, I saw that when I was just talking about that one lady. She had enough information to get herself into trouble almost, but the judge was pretty nice to her. But she said, if you want to continue as, I'm pretty sure she said something, if you want to continue with this as Mrs. Uzimaduzi, you can. But I'm not doing this, I don't have jurisdiction over you thing. And this is, you know, and she kind of still scared her back into doing that, when they know full well they don't have jurisdiction over another man. And they know it's a lie because of the language that they use. You know, this is another problem, right? Between men, this is a key thing to knowing about the legal system as well. Between men, we all use common English. Okay? We all use common English. Right? And so this is the way the lie works for regular people and people that enforce the system as well. So we all use regular English. And that's what exists in the natural world. In the physical world, we have a language that we can recognize between men, and it might have multiple different meanings. It might have loads of different meanings, right? But what happens with the legal system is, for instance, person, right? That is the meaning for person within the legal system is isolated. Yeah? So person over here, the same word, has been isolated now. Because what do we know as a person? We know, well, this guy could be a person. Or if you know a little bit more about what person means, you may even know that the persona is a character, a fictional character. But most people understand the person as being a man or a woman or anybody really that's part of the human race. We don't have to get completely bent out of shape about using certain words. What we need to do is we need to understand the jurisdiction of those words. So what happens when you take this word and then it only means this? Yeah? It only relates to a fictional entity. That's what the legal system does. They take the same word, okay, and they isolate the meaning. Okay, anybody can do that. If I want to isolate the meaning of a word, I can. Inside my head I can do it. I can say, well, person means a monkey, and that's it. So I can isolate a meaning, and I can make up a whole new meaning, right? So person means monkey, a whole new meaning, really. Yeah? And I can isolate a meaning. And that comes down to authorship. That comes down to just an idea by a certain person. So the problem is, though, and I can have this idea over here in the fictional realm of my own home, if you like. But the problem is, if I invite somebody into the home, yeah, I have to tell them, because I'm still in the physical world, yeah, I have to tell them I've changed the rules of this word if I want them to understand the rules of the new word, okay, or the meaning of or the meaning of the new word, okay. I have to inform them the same way as if I write a letter and send it out over to this guy here that only speaks common language. I have to tell him what person means. Otherwise, it means this over here, because this is where this guy lives in the physical world. It means all the things that this means over here. When I send this information out over to here, yeah, in physical format, I have committed fraud if I'm trying to get a different meaning out of this. This is the fraud of the system. This is why it is fraud. Because this piece of information here, which means something different when it's attached to this guy, when it leaves and comes over here, there's a different meaning to it. That's the trick. But the problem is that that trick is provable fraud at that point, because the meaning of this word has changed when it comes into the physical world. Okay? Super duper important to understand that, because every time they send you a tax bill, it's fraud. Number one, not to mention number one, that they know exactly where the thing is that they have jurisdiction over. Yeah. It's in their filing cabinet. Yeah. And what they will say is they will say that because somebody on your behalf filed this thing, or because you're holding something with that name on it from the legal system, they'll say, well, you wanted, or they will infer that you wanted to be part of the system, or somehow you wanted to, deal with the system. And they can say that all they like. Again, you can always pipe up with, well, give me the terms and conditions of that. There aren't any terms and conditions with any of it. There's no actual agreement with any of it. Do you agree to do this? Well, I don't know what any of that stuff means on that piece of paper. It could mean anything. And it does within the legal system. They narrow it down. But the problem is, it does mean anything, because then they put it back in the physical world without the definition attached to it. If you're going to redefine a word or pick the meaning of a word, you better send the definition with it of who you're trying to get. See, the problem is if they sent the definition with, let's say, the individual name on the original birth certificate, they'd have to send out and say, look, this guy here of the original birth certificate, owes us X, Y, and Z. And then you'd say, well, I don't have a piece of paper that matches up exactly with, Joe Blogg's original. I only have Joe Blogg's copy. I don't have the exact same thing. And at that point, this guy over here can comprehend that it's a bit of a trick at that point. But this is the danger of when you use language and you don't define it. And you'll notice that there is no authorship on most of those things. There's nobody authoring the language. Who's authoring the language? When you go into court, another good thing to say is, I'm speaking common English now. So if you're going to use something in common English and you're going to isolate the meaning, because we're in the physical world, I'd appreciate it if you're isolating the meaning, give me the definition. So everything you say, and exactly every time you ask for this dude, Joe Bloggs, I want to know which Joe Bloggs you're talking to. Are you talking to the one that's up the sleeve? The piece of paper up the sleeve? Are you talking to the original birth certificate? Are you trying to talk to this copy over here, or me even? Anytime you want to talk to, if you think you've got jurisdiction over me, every time you talk to Joe Bloggs, just add in, I'm addressing the living man before and after this name. So would the living man, Joe Bloggs, please respond to this question? This is to the living man, Joe Bloggs. Okay? They won't do it, because they don't have jurisdiction over the living man. They won't do it. Ask the judge, well, where's the original birth certificate you have jurisdiction over today? Why isn't that thing here? Did you not bring it to the court here? And how are you going to decide anything when you don't have possession of that thing? You have to have physical possession. Now, what you could argue is, like with the TV remote, that this individual writes down on a bit of paper and then that travels to that thing to affect it. So it's a bit like, it's a bit like the physical contact is traveling. The problem is, it's one of them weird things. Like, to me, I feel like you have to be within physical touching range or verbal communication range. And that isn't going to cut it in a filing cabinet that's hundreds and hundreds of miles away somewhere inside a building, inside a filing cabinet, inside, deep inside the depths of the legal system, that physical contact is not good enough for me. I would say you can't affect something without actually having contact with it. You can't affect something in the physical world without actually having contact with it. So at this point here, you can ask the judge, are you trying to commit fraud? You can ask the judge, well, are you trying to commit fraud by talking to a completely irrelevant Joe Bloggs? That's only when they want to speak for Joe Bloggs. They're going to have some kind of contact with a Joe Bloggs in order to speak on behalf of a Joe Bloggs. Wow. If you can keep track of all this. So anyway, that is the key thing to the legal system, is that there's there is nothing going on in this midpoint here. This is the jump over to the metaphysical. You just present something over to here, and then they decide what they're going to do with what you present. If you're having a squabble with another character over here, you present some stuff and then they decide again. Yeah. What else did I want to show? Oh, I mean, here's an example of how no, I can't go back that far. Here's another example, right? If you didn't have this is a way of thinking about it. If this guy had a bike here, okay, wow, a real simple bicycle. If this guy had a bicycle here, right, and that was the original bicycle again, we put a little O on it. What he does is he gives you an identical bicycle. Try and draw it about the same. Ooh. Okay. So he gives you an identical bicycle just with a C on it. Yeah. And this is the thing that you can ride. But you can't ride the original and affect the original. And he can't ride your bicycle and affect it because it's in your possession. Okay. So think about that idea of, a physical thing that you cannot affect it. You have to be on the bike to make it do anything. Yeah. He has to be on this bike to make it do anything. Simply him saying, well, you see, this is the problem, you can't, he cannot, what I'm saying is, this character here, the judge, cannot talk on behalf of this thing. Yeah. If he's going to talk on behalf of it, then he has just accepted responsibility for it. Point that out to him. So, oh, you're now going to take responsibility for that name. Is that what you're doing? Oh, that lawyer's going to take responsibility. So all the issues with that name that you have right now are now his responsibility. Oh, it doesn't work like that. That's the kind of questions you've got to pose to the judge, if you ever get into court, I suppose. What else did I want to do? So we kind of went through the reason why we have the legal system the way it is. And again, that big pot of money that people think they're entitled to, the trust, that trust fund, that is there. Somebody has put that there, and that only guarantees this thing. All the transactions and trades this thing does has to be guaranteed. If this thing backs out on a contract and another fictional party is harmed, let's say this thing was going to, this is for an example here, this is how contracts are different from just an agreement man to man, is that in a contract, if you don't fulfill your end of the contract and the other party then incurs more expense because of that, let's say you were going to buy 10 apples off your neighbor for $10, he didn't have, the apples all went rotten, he didn't have any apples to give to you for $10, so you had a contract in place that you would buy the apples for $10, and he doesn't fulfill his end of the agreement. Yeah, so you've already paid him for the the apples, but he doesn't come through with the apples. Or even if you haven't paid him, actually, he hasn't come through with the apples. Now you had to go and buy some apples from somebody else, and the apples were $20 for the same amount of apples. Now you see what you can do. You can sue him for the original money back, so your $10 back if you've already paid him. If you haven't paid him, though, you can't get that back, but you can sue him for the difference, how much damage it's caused you. So that extra $10 it cost you to buy the apples elsewhere, you can sue that guy now because he broke his contract and it cost you money. It harmed you. Well, I say you, it harmed your fictional entity. Okay, that fictional character. And that's the purpose of a contract, is to bind men to do something and protect, the interests of the fictional character. And this money here has to cover all those problems. Yeah? Because if this guy over here so if the guy with the contract decides he ain't paying it, right, he's not agreeing to it and he doesn't think he's done anything wrong, the court thinks he's done something wrong and he's not paying it, he says, no, I'm not paying it, then the court dips into that fund, supposed to dip into the fund and pay it to the harmed party, wherever it would be, over here somewhere, on behalf of this thing causing harm. Now they won't ever do that. What they'll do is they'll say, well, you have to pay out of your bank account, and any assets that you have or whatever. Not the way it works. The physical assets, here we go again. Physical things are not held by the legal system. They're not. What you have is with your property, say your house here. What you have again, it's pretty simple. But what they do for this house over here is they've got another piece of paper, and it's just called a deed. Okay, and it's the original deed. Okay, they will not give you they will only give you a copy of the deed. So what they do is they send you back a copy. So there you have your copy of the deed for this house. Okay. What they have control of is this thing. So what they do is, if you don't pay your taxes or something, and you don't know how to talk to a judge and all the rest of it, and you end up in court and you say, oh yeah, well, I don't have to pay them, and they say, no, you do. Right, that's it, you're not paid them. It's been so many years delinquent now. What we're going to do is we're just going to sell your property. And this guy thinks, oh no, they're going to sell my house. No, the property is this. This is actual property in the legal system. Okay, I can't write it all out. That's property. That's the property of the legal system. We're going to sell the deed. We're going to sell your property. They don't even sell it. What they do is they sell a copy of it again to somebody else. So somebody else has another copy of it. And what happens at that point is that all the people that enforce the system believe that if you hold this deed here, this copy of a deed, so if there's another guy down here that just bought it, and the sheriff and everybody else thinks that this guy is now entitled to this house. And that's the mindset of people within the system. You hear people all the time will say, well, you don't own your house because they charge tax on it. And because they charge tax on it, they can sell it if you don't sell the original deed. And this is the way it works. But they don't own, the legal system never owns that thing. It never owns the bank account even. The bank account is not owned by the value that's in the bank account is not owned by the legal system. Okay? You must be well up on how this works with the idea of possession of something. The idea of possession of something, and what they can and can't do. I mean, they can go ahead and sell that, but you better go, when they go to sell it, maybe they'll have you locked up in jail at the time. You better have somebody down there saying, do not buy this deed. That deed is, if you buy that deed, you're not getting anything. It's just a piece of paper. You're simply just shouting it out. I would be down there. Of course, they'd probably arrest you for disturbing the peace at that point. But I'd be down at the courthouse while they're on the steps of the courthouse trying to auction that thing off, and I'd be saying, "Don't buy that. You're not getting anything. Okay, you're not getting the home, the house, the physical thing. What you're doing is getting a copy of a piece of paper that they hold, and you're getting a tax burden now because you're now responsible for the taxes, and they'll come after you for the taxes. It's a very dangerous game actually to play if you buy deeds or property from an auction. You better make damn sure that the property that they're selling off has been abandoned and doesn't have somebody living in it. Because at that point, you've just taken on responsibility for paying. Unless you know how the system works, of course, you've just taken on responsibility. If you're unaware of it, you've just taken on responsibility for paying tax on that property. So I don't know. Maybe somebody out there could make that work to their advantage. Let them sell it. Let somebody else buy the thing, and then they're responsible for taxes on the thing. Meanwhile, you retain possession of said house. What else did I want to talk about with the legal system? Oh boy, oh boy. A couple of things on the David Vobes channel, which is complete nonsense, is this idea of, in fact, let's just go for file new. Excuse me. It's this idea on the channel that you don't have to pay for water. This is a UK thing that's going on at the minute. Gas, electricity, in fact, any services or utilities, if you want to call it that. The mindset of the people that are saying this is that the government have already taken tax from you and spent that tax on producing these things, and then they're double charging you. They're charging you again for something that they've already paid for, supposedly. Now, unless you've got all the paperwork within the legal system, within the government, to track exactly where those dollars or pounds or whatever you want to call it, where that money has gone, unless you've got that in order to track exactly where that's gone, you cannot make that you can't make that claim. Furthermore, I want to point this out to people. Tax, again, it's a donation. Okay? Here's the line. Again, what you do over here is you make a donation. It's a gift. You give them that tax. When I give you a gift, there is no reciprocal thing going on there. I'm not expecting something back when I give you a gift. This is what tax is. It's a gift to the government. You should not expect anything back for that tax. There is nothing coming back for that tax. What they do is they give you a gift back. Okay, and it's, things that they put out in the world, maybe schools, and roads and stuff like that. So they give you some kind of infrastructure and, all this garbage back, maybe a library, or, maybe a park to go walk your dog in. Okay. That's what they give you back. This is a gift again, backwards this way. There is no written contract, there's no nothing. Okay? They just put it into the common, and then you just give them a gift of tax back. So when these people come on the air and say, well, I've already paid this tax to pay for these things here. No, you have not. You've given them a gift over here, the government a gift. Okay? They can spend it on what they want. Yeah, they can spend it on making these things. but you have not paid for them. Okay, there's a difference there. Believe you me, you look completely stupid when you go on the show, and even when Richard says himself, you just look stupid when you do that. Not to mention that supposed awake people, if you realize really what is going on, with the idea of becoming awakened and um, thinking about the idea of freedom, because that's really what everybody wants, is they want freedom. They don't want to be controlled. And the idea of freedom is taking responsibility for yourself. So take responsibility for the things you want. Water, gas, electricity, yeah? Pay for those things or make them yourself. Because this coming down the water pipe, that is not, somebody's had to put effort and work into making that. The gas, somebody's had to put effort and work into the gas lines, digging the wells, pumping it to you, again with the electricity. Yeah? These people that are saying this on the Richard Vobes channel about the electricity are completely insane. They're saying this thing comes out of the ether, right? And it just manifests in power lines. Well, somebody had to put the power line there, and if it just manifests that easy, prove it. Put your own power line up and make your own electricity, or gather your own electricity right out of the ether. What? They can't do it. They can't prove what they're even saying. It's absolute insanity. And what it boils down to is when you don't pay for this stuff and you use it, that's called theft. That's not taking responsibility for yourself. That's thieving. Yeah? These people that do that are listening to the channel, listening to the Richard Vobes channel, and are doing the I'm not going to pay for my utilities nonsense, you're going to end up going to jail. I guarantee it. As bad as these judges are, they won't have an issue. Most of those judges, I believe in natural law. They know the jurisdictional boundary of the legal system does not extend to a man. Except if you break natural law, then they will not have a problem sending you directly to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. They won't have a problem sending you there. Yeah, because they know you've thieved that, the utilities. They're not stopping you from, the government's not stopping you from going down to the river and getting a bucket of water, or sticking a bucket outside your house and collecting rainwater. They're not stopping you from doing that. You can do that for yourself. So it's not a right to have water. The same with electricity. They're not stopping you from making your own electricity. You can put a solar panel on the roof and make your own electricity. They're not stopping you from doing it. Guess what? They're not stopping you from digging your own gas well. Well, they might cause a bit of a fuss about that. But you could have a biodigester in the back garden, put all your food waste in it and make your own gas. But, like always, people are lazy. They don't want to do all these things for themselves, and they want a free ride. And some might say, well, just let them go at it and let them go to jail. But I just feel sorry for people that are kind of caught up in the wannabe free thing. And they, you've got people like Richard Vobes. He seems like a nice guy. Is he a system shill? I don't know. But the problem is, when you put out information into the world and you get rewarded for putting out certain information, yeah, there's a chance that if the information is wrong that you're putting out and you get rewarded for it anyway, there's a chance you're going to keep on doing that and repeating that behavior. Okay? And this is why you may see certain channels going on about the same thing over and over and over again, because they're getting rewarded for it. So I'd be very wary of channels that are always trying to push some, a book or something, or some kind of advertisement all the time. They're getting some kind of reward for pushing something. Because I've been toying with this idea lately, is the fact that, if you're doing that in a what am I going to say? there's always an element of truth in everything. But if the lie is there, it's almost like the lie takes over as the individual moves down a path of false reward. I don't know how to explain it really, but it's just like you become corrupted by the system, so to speak. Oh, I think I'm telling the truth, but oh, I'm being rewarded for this. And what that does is it blurs your vision to really maybe what is going on with the information. You stop saying, well, hang on, you stop questioning the information, and all of a sudden it's just like, I'll just relay the information because I'm getting paid out here. I'm hitting the jackpot every time I do a video on this, and it might be completely false. I'm not saying it is every time, but you know what I mean? There is definitely a darker spiritual power at work, and it's just the corruption and the greed that pushes that thing, and it just spirals out of control, ever increasingly out of control, further and further away from balance. So this is very much a spiritual thing when it comes to understanding this stuff, because you do need to understand the difference between the physical world and the spiritual world. And again, this is why, in the Bible it said, Jesus is the Savior. Well, who is Jesus? He's the physical embodiment of God on earth. Yeah, the physical. Just like the sun in the sky, again, another representation of the physical. Okay, just like Jesus is the sun. It's a representation of the physical. Yeah, Jesus will save you. Yeah, if you follow Jesus, if you follow the physical set of rules that are there. This is how we get back to natural law now, and understanding natural law. You have to understand natural law. You have to understand where your place on the earth is in terms of natural law. And you can use everything that you see around you to interpret that, as long as you've got to interpret it correctly. I had a guy arguing with me the other day saying, well, it's open to interpretation, natural law. Well, it's not really. When you really delve into the heart of the thing, it's not open to interpretation. But if it's been clouded with some lies by certain people, then yeah, you won't be able to find the truth because you're still clouded. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty of natural law, it's just the way it is. It doesn't change. It's the way the physical world works. Okay, that's why Jesus is the Savior. That's why the 10 Commandments are set in stone. The stone is the physical world. Okay, so that is the saving grace of everything, is the fact that we are in a physical world that has those rules. I mean, how do we know that we're all equal between men? How do we know that? Yeah? Ask those questions yourself. Or how do I know that I'm equal to another man? Yeah? And I'm just talking about another average everyday man. I'm not talking about somebody that's done something wrong or anything like that. I'm talking about just on a, why am I equal with another man? Why is that man over there that may be stronger than me, why is he not superior to me? Yeah? Well, he may be superior to you in strength, but may not be in intelligence. Yeah, and there's a bountiful range of people in between everything. Yeah, and who gets to pick? If we were in the natural world, who would get to pick who is, the dominant? Who is in charge of the species? Who gets to pick that? It's not the strong man necessarily. Nature might pick the intelligent man, or nature might pick a man that's in between those two things. Yeah. Henceforth, you see what most human beings are. Relatively intelligent and relatively strong, so to speak, and they're not one extreme or the other. The species has those differences, but as a whole, nature gets to pick that. When you come out of nature and go into the city state, what we're in now, who's picking? Well, nobody gets to pick because we're not in nature anymore. Nature, the only thing that gets to pick who's in charge is nature. Yeah, another man doesn't get to pick that. These are all sort of ideas that you have to get familiar with. Why is a man, you know, God shows us why a man is not, all powerful just in his physicality, because he matches a man up with a woman, and 50-50 creates the next generation, perpetuates the species. So not one man alone is above anybody else, and God shows us that by having a man and a woman come together. So you have the delicate side of the species and the strong side of the species coming together, 50-50, to form the next generation. I don't know. There's lots of things like that you have to understand about why natural law is the way it is, or why the law is the way it is. I mean, if you look into nature, what is of the utmost importance in nature is balance. If you look at how all the systems work in nature, they all form a point of equilibrium where they're all balanced. Okay, there's a reaction and an equal opposite reaction to that action. Trying to think what else I want to talk about with natural law. Understanding those rules though is the key. Understanding the basics of natural law is also key to understanding why certain people don't have jurisdiction over you. If you know all men are created equally, yeah, and there's not one man out there that would, with any sense, would say no, that man is created more equal than me, he's stronger than me, or he's more intelligent than me. There's not one man that would agree to that, because what that does, if you don't want to be equal to somebody else, what does that mean? Yeah, if you say no, I'm superior to you, or somebody says they're superior to you, what does that open them up to? Well, what it's saying is, if somebody is kind of bullying you, yeah, what that guy's saying is, now because we're not equal, what it means is survival of the fittest nonsense is there, yeah, because he's saying that he's fitter than you. What does that open him up to? Well, it opens him up to attack from you as well. Well, if you're going to say we're not equals, then that means it's survival of the fittest, which means you put your own head on the block potentially as well. Because if I suddenly turn around and take advantage of you, you're saying that's all right, essentially. If somebody says no, we're not equals, I can take advantage of you. Well, then vice versa, yeah, because we're not equals, so we're going to find out who's more equal. Is that what you want? I guarantee it. People aren't going to say that out loud. At least intelligent people aren't going to say it out loud. Because what that means is there's a threat there now, and I'm allowed to defend myself in a threat situation if that guy's going to harm me. Again, understanding natural law is going to help you with that stuff. Oh yeah, but Dan, in the wild, lion, or you imagine two bucks coming together and fighting. Okay, well, okay, yeah, two bucks do come together and fight. Okay, for dominance of what? For dominance of the herd. But again, remember who is picking who's going to be dominant. Nature's picking that. It's not that individual animal isn't picking that. It's nature around that decides which one's going to take control, which one's going to win that fight. Okay, and a lot of the time, we're not talking about when we're talking about that situation, we're not talking about, I don't know, I don't really want to get into it now, but we're not talking about one individual just dominating everything. I mean, if you look at the way animals act in nature, the best thing to do is just go and do it and actually observe animals. But if my ram's running around the sheep, the rest of the ewes, that ram, it might try to breed a sheep, one of the ewes, if he feels like she's ready. If she's not ready, she won't stand for him, you know. And then she'll run off, and he might chase her a couple more times, and eventually he'll give up. But there's no gang banging going on there, right? Yeah, there's no, you know what I mean. Don't know how to explain it, but if you just look at the way animals behave in nature, so they have to be in a pretty natural circumstances, right? If you take them out of nature, which my sheep are kind of, they're in the crossover point there. But because you can take some animals completely out of nature and they'll all act weird. If you put a whole bunch of male animals in a pen together, guess what they start doing? Yeah, they start doing each other. Yeah, because they've been taken out of their natural environment and plonked into a situation that isn't normal. So you've got to, when you're watching animals, you've got to realize what situation they're in and why they're behaving that way. Okay. Anyway, I don't really want to get bogged down with all that stuff right now. But that's just some ideas there. But those are those laws, in the physical world that do not change. Yeah. And that's the beauty of them. They don't change. They're set in stone. They do not change. Unlike legal laws, which are changed on almost a daily basis. And if you go into court, that judge, in certain circumstances, he can change an outcome, on how he feels. If he can warrant it somehow. If he can warrant it somehow, he can change an outcome. So don't plan on going in every time, even if you know legal law inside and out. There's going to be times when, if it doesn't suit the needs of the legal system, you're not going to win. Okay. I think we'll leave it there. But again, this whole situation with the not paying utilities is just absolute flipping lunacy, absolute craziness. Okay, I'd be very, very wary of channels that push this idea. And unfortunately, I mean, I'd love to go on Richard's channel. I talk to him, but it's extremely dangerous telling people that, oh, you've paid the tax and we can prove that you've paid the tax, and that tax is a gift to the government. Why? Because they're not taxing you. They're taxing a piece of paper with a name, with the same label as you use for your name. And that's another thing. Don't be afraid of using that label. Nobody owns that name. So this whole, oh, I changed my name and put a whole bunch of extra bits and bobs in it, and I'm just, like if I went to court, I'd say, look, while you're asking, when the judge pipes up as Mr. Whoever here, I would be like, well, hang on a minute, which Mr. Whatever are you trying to communicate with here? And then I'd be piping up, I'm here under coercement, and I'm trying to sort out a mistake that you're likely to make at this, so-called hearing. That's how you go on. Anyway, yes, I mean, there are some things that you will hear on his channel that are good tips, like you shouldn't allow the judge to get jurisdiction over you. But if you start off the conversation with, hang on a minute, who the hell are you even talking to? And why that I shouldn't even be here, but I'm here just to prevent a mistake, that's the kind of attitude you have to take. Be right up front, straight, just kick straight into it. Don't be doing all this, well, I'm not gonna, the judge says be seated and all. You're like, I'm not gonna sit here and I'm not gonna do this, that, and the other, and these, that, on them. Just be straight with him. Which fictional entity are you talking about right now? What language are we going to be talking in here? Because those are all the ideas you've got to be comfortable with, and you've got to really be comfortable with knowing the difference between those jurisdictional boundaries. I'm leaving it there. Lord knows how long this video is. I mean, it's just I'm just trying to think off the top of my head what I've forgotten. Probably forgotten a whole bunch out there. Questions, comments, put them in the comments. And I'll say two things. If you don't have to agree with what I'm saying here, just go away and just do your own thing. You do the legal system thing if you want to do it. Do whatever you want to do. But please don't bother leaving a rude comment or a snarky comment, because I'll just delete it. You're just wasting your time and a little bit of my time, because it's going to be gone. So there's just no point. The way I look at that is that this channel's my channel. It's like if I invited, I don't, it's like inviting somebody into your home. If they don't like your curtains, they shouldn't really be saying, oh, don't like your curtains, don't like what you've done here with your color scheme. You just keep your comments to yourself and leave, and you make comments somewhere else, at somebody else's house, somewhere else. Here there's no point, because I know there will be people that don't agree with what I've said here for whatever reason. Maybe the questioning is not there yet for those people. Maybe they're not asking the right questions yet. But that's the main takeaway. Like, most of this stuff that I'm talking about here is stuff that I've kind of deduced by asking the question, well, why is that like that? And what is the purpose of why even have a big chunk of money in an account? Why? What is the purpose of it? Because it's your birthright? Why would anybody transfer, I mean, number one, you can't do it anyway. you can't value something, put it in an account away from somebody, not give them the money that's in that account. It's all just nonsense. It's an idea. It's a neat idea that somebody's brought up, but it's nonsense. Just question why that would be like that. And when you question it, you usually will find the right answer, I think. Most of those ideas that you see on Richard Vobes' channel it's regurgitated stuff that I've seen. I've been looking at this for quite some time now, many years, and it's that stuff that Richard had. The people that he has on, most of it is regurgitated old stuff. 10 or more years ago now. I don't know what to say about it other than it's I don't think it's getting anybody anywhere, a lot of it. There needs to be a different understanding to the way the legal system works. There needs to be a different understanding of how language works and who has jurisdiction over language. What does language mean in the physical world compared to what it means behind closed doors in somebody's head, for example? Yeah. And who gets the right to decide what that language means at what point? I mean, it's all stuff that I've covered in old videos, but trying to bring it all together a little bit more. And like I said, I probably need to write some kind of paper on this so that people can have it to read through. And eventually I will get round to writing something a little, just a couple of pages on it. But again, I ain't got time to really sit down and do it right now. Just to sit down and try and do this video, they end up going to be over an hour. And then for me to actually write down something that makes sense. Um, yeah, something that's coherent is just I mean, it's difficult because there's a lot of different concepts to get your head wrapped around here. But like I said, once you get your head wrapped around them, everything in the legal system is easy to understand why it's a certain way. When can a cop put his hands on you and when can't he? When can he arrest you? When can't he arrest you? I had a little situation with. Let me explain this just real quick. I had a little situation with over here. The way they do property taxes, at least in my part of America, is they every once in a while they'll send out an appraiser and they walk around the property, around the land and the house. They come in and walk around it and see what you've got and appraise it. Okay, they decide how much taxes you're going to pay essentially by saying what you've got, on your land. Okay, and so what they're doing is they're inspecting the property. Now, I had a guy show up. He'd come down the driveway and he said, "Well, he didn't know I was here. He thought I wasn't here. He waited and waited and waited, and then he came in down the driveway, and I popped out and I said, woo, 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 because I could see him coming in. I said, no, you're not coming in here. This is private land, bugger off, basically. And he then proceeded to overstep his boundaries. And he said, well, I have authority to come in here and appraise your property. I have the authority. I think he said like the state attorney general maybe or somebody within the state gave it, had given him a little piece of paper with a little seal on it, whatever, that gave him the authority to inspect property. Okay, I said, no, you don't. You don't have permission to come on this land, on the curtilage of the house, and just walk around willy-nilly. I don't want them doing it. If my daughter was here alone, I wouldn't want some strange guy showing up just walking around. I mean, it's what do these people think? I don't think they think through everything they do anyway. But I said, no, bugger off. Anyway, he wasn't having any of it. I said, I kind of made a hint that he probably ought to leave or I would get angry. Anyway, I won't say what I said to him, but it involved something significant happening to him. Okay. Anyway, he got all, he was like, oh, he's giving me all the spiel about he's got the right to be there. I said, no, you don't. Now, any normal person that was doing that job would think, hang on, do I have the right to go on somebody else's land, on private land, and walk around willy-nilly? Now, think about what a cop has the right to do. A cop can't go into somebody else's house, which is not what he was trying to do, but the cop cannot, a police officer cannot come onto the curtilage of somebody's house without a warrant. Yeah, written, signed off from a judge. There's a reason for that. And then you have the local county appraiser thinking that he has that right somehow, that he's above a cop somehow, and he has the right to walk around the curtilage of the house. It's just absolutely insane. You know why the reason that I'm given that they think they have that authority is because they are required by law to do an inspection of, private property. Remember what I said property was earlier? They have to do an inspection every so many years, and they're required to do that by law. Now, I didn't make the point at the time. Well, actually, I think I did say that you could fly over or just take pictures, aerial pictures. And in fact, that's what I told him to do when he was going to measure up some stuff. I said, you can just take an aerial picture and measure it from up there. You don't have to come on my land. Okay. And then what else did I point out to him? Oh, I can't remember now. I actually said to him, I said, you know what, you do know what you know what the property that legal property, what you're inspecting is, don't you? And he's like, oh, I don't know what. I said, it's the piece of paper that is in your filing cabinet. It's the original deed. That's the piece of paper. That is the legal property that you can inspect, not the actual physical land. He didn't get it, you know. He couldn't make the distinction between what is legal and what is physical. But that's the kind of problem that you're going to have. Of course, my wife, tell you what happened. Taxes went up because I'd put a new barn up, and that's what I told him. You can measure that from the sky. Taxes went up. I think I might have told this story before though. Taxes went up. My wife phoned up, and they said to her, "Oh, you're the wife of the guy that threatened us." And I said, "Is that really what he said?" I said, "Well, he made the I just like kids. He made the first threat by saying he could just walk in here, and I couldn't do anything about it. You know, when somebody does that to you, that's a threat. You know, I mean, it might not. I mean, at some point, you know, you have to stand up for something. Otherwise, you know." Anyway, Katy Perry said that once, and I think so did Malcolm X. You got to stand for something, or you'll fall for everything. You know. I'm gonna leave it there. Little story. That I've got plenty more little legal nonsense stories. Maybe I'll do one. Maybe next time I'll do one on my mother's land. She had a footpath put through on her. I'll tell you that story another time. More nonsense, more legal nonsense. But anyway, I will. Yeah, that's the end of this video. And questions again below, and nothing. Don't bother with rude stuff. I'm not interested. So anyway, thanks and bye.